Welcome to the Power and Light podcast. My name is Josiah Winnell, and today I am joined by Jude Miley and Preston Graber. It's so great to have them here alongside me, and today we are talking about the Kansas City Chiefs, and this is a common topic on the show because, as a Kansas City-based podcast, we love to talk about the Kansas City Chiefs. However, it feels like a different type of year. Even though the Chiefs sit atop the AFC West standings with a 13-1 record, that one blemish seems like so much more when you see all of the close games the Chiefs have played this year. But they're still winning, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So, we're going to go back and look at the Browns matchup. From the time we're recording it, the most recent episode is the Cleveland Browns road game for the Kansas City Chiefs, in which they won 21-7. Preston, this was a tale of two halves, I think is probably the best way to say it. Can you kind of describe why it was that way and what you were impressed by the Chiefs and what they did and what things that you are still worried about?
Yeah, well, obviously we knew going into the game it should have been an easy win. It was almost like the Raiders where we marked it off as a win. But yeah, easily the tale of two halves. First half, it looked like the offense was doing really well. We just couldn't get the ball into the end zone. Bucker had the missed field goal there. So a little skeptical there. But yeah, really, Juju started scoring off in the first quarter, and then Noah Gray got a touchdown. Both of those players have looked really good. And then Worthy had the rushing touchdown in the third quarter. But then after that, for the next 27 minutes of the game, it was just a brutal offensive showing. We could not seem to do anything. But the big bright side of this game was our defense. We turned Jameis Winston over 3 times through the air, and I believe we forced 3 fumbles, and we had Karlaftis show out and have multiple sacks. So all in all, good game. Lots of bright sides. The Mahomes injury is something I'm sure we will talk about here soon. And so I'll let you go with that.
Yeah, of course. Well, we will talk about it in a moment. And you did point out what I think was the strongest suit, of course. Very similar answers if I were to. Was saying that the defense played really well. I mean, anytime a defense forces 6 turnovers, you kind of have to give them some credit. The fact that they forced that many and yet only won by 14 is kind of a hesitation. Now, picking away at Chiefs wins is much better than picking away at those Chiefs losses, but I will say that there are things that we need to work on. There's always things. There's no perfect team in the NFL, but there feels like there's a lot more than usual. But before we dive way too deep into that, there was somebody who made a reappearance to the Kansas City Chiefs, to the rushing attack. Jude Miley, how excited were you to see Isaiah Pacheco back out there in his red uniform for the Kansas City Chiefs?
Yeah, I'm kind of an Isaiah Pacheco supporter, right? And just someone who we know is talented and who was so helpful last year. It's just good to see him back because the Chiefs have lost people this year, and it's kind of discouraging as people get injured and people go down. But to have Pacheco come back, it feels good, and it kind of gives a spark. And just the name, right? Knowing he's on the field gives like an aura boost overall for the team.
Yeah, I mean, that's perfect. And the Chiefs need all the aura boost that they can get. I think the biggest thing that it does, right, is it takes a little more pressure off Kareem Hunt because he was brought in to fulfill that hole that Isaiah Pacheco left when he got injured early in the season. The question is, did he fulfill that role well? The answer is maybe. The Chiefs only lost 1 game, so did he do anything horribly? No, but Preston, this is a different type of Kareem Hunt that we just saw in this last, I guess, couple of weeks in this Chiefs uniform. Do you think he did an adequate job of fulfilling that role as a replacement for Isaiah Pacheco? And then looking forward, what do you think his role is on the Chiefs as they pursue these last 3 regular season games as they head towards the playoffs?
Yeah, of course Kareem Hunt did an adequate job. We're 13-1, so I think that's fairly blatant. But no, I think going into the playoffs, Kareem's still going to be a part of the game. He's going to be the short down guy. We don't want to hurt Pacheco, and clearly he is not at his full percent. 13 carries for 32 yards is not the Isaiah Pacheco us in Kansas City now. And so, yeah, it's been slow getting Pacheco back up and going. I'm assuming that by week 17 and 18, he'll see more of the carries, probably 75-25 between him and Kareem. But Kareem's still going to be heavily involved. And so I think that he'll still have the goal line downs. Kareem will still get the passing downs every now and then. Basically, we'll have Pacheco on the field when we think we need explosive plays, but Kareem will be the more like bulldozer type back.
Yeah, it's a 1-2 punch that the Chiefs really haven't had for quite a while. I mean, it's not an equal comparison, but think about that first Super Bowl win. You have Williams alongside Jarrett McKinnon, and it's just one of those teams that, like, yeah, it's a 1-2 punch, but it's very different. I agree with Preston in saying that they're bulldozing type running backs, but Kareem Hunt can do a variety of different things, and we know what Pacheco can do because we saw it last year. All right, Jude, let's move to the future. We already kind of prefaced it for a little bit there, but there's 3 games remaining for the Kansas City Chiefs, and these 3 games are in a pretty tight window. I'll ask Preston about that in a second, but first of all, Jude, I feel like I don't want to say you're a Texans fan because obviously it feels like you're a Chiefs fan and you have loyalties in a lot of places. But looking at this Texans game, this is the final game until the playoffs, which the Chiefs likely will have clinched a home game. But this is the final regular season home game. What is your message to fans about the Texans, first of all? What's your thoughts about them? But also, why should they be extra excited for this Saturday noon game? It's very, very random, but it's a Saturday noon game. What are you looking forward for this Texans game coming up on Saturday?
Okay, my first message is, it's a weird time for a game, right? Saturday at noon. If you're not like super looking towards the future, you might not have realized early in the week that they were playing on a Saturday noon. So if someone happens to tease you about not knowing the game is on Saturday at noon, don't be ashamed of that, okay? Second of all, the Texans, Stephon Diggs, I love him, but he's injured. So why can I cheer for the Texans? I will not cheer for the Texans. The Texans, you shouldn't like them now, right? Stephon Diggs is the only likable player on their team. I mean, that's debatable. But as a Chiefs perspective, Stephon Diggs is the only likable person on that team. But, yeah, there's nothing to be scared of, really. I don't like the Texans right now. I don't think they've been playing super well. I don't think their division's been playing well. It's just kind of been mediocre. I thought the Texans would be good at the beginning of the season, and they looked good for a while, but I don't know. When Nico Collins went down, and you would expect Tank Dell to be like this superhero, right? Because last season he was a superhero, it felt like. You're playing fantasy, you pick him off the waiver wires, and he's a superhero. But he just wasn't quite the superhero you'd expect, so they just don't seem like that. You would think their wide receivers were going to be so good this year. But now it's like, what do they have? They have Nico Collins, yeah, and he's the clear number 1. When at the beginning of the season, it was like, who is the number 1? That was what I was thinking. So, I don't know. I wouldn't be super scared of the Texans this week. And if I was a fan, I'd be like, yes, the Chiefs get to play. We'll see if Mahomes is in, Just let's see if they can beat another at least decent team, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is a playoff team, right? This is the the division leader. And yes, an AFC South that isn't great. You've got 2 3-11 teams in Jacksonville and Tennessee, but Indianapolis is okay. They're just a game under 500, or I guess 2 now technically. But this is a 9-5 Houston Texans team. That is something to be scared of. That is genuinely something to be scared of. Now, it's a day game at Arrowhead. That can sometimes be a little bit weird for us. But I feel like this Chiefs team is built to win close games against teams like this. And it's looking at this Texans team, 4-3 away. Okay, you know what? We'll see what happens. Regardless of all the stats, and I know this should be obvious because the one loss was at Buffalo for the Kansas City Chiefs, they're 7-0 at home. And yes, Arrowhead is one of the best home field atmospheres. I would argue the best home field atmosphere in the NFL. But looking at it, they're undefeated at home. There's no reason people shouldn't be, if you're putting money on it, if you're picking, there's no reason you shouldn't pick the Chiefs to win this game because they are the better team. They do have the home field advantage. And looking at this Houston team, you're right, Jude, they aren't at full strength. They aren't the same team that we saw at the beginning of the year that I was genuinely afraid of. When you look at the whole Chiefs schedule from the beginning of the year, you circle this game. At least I did. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, this is at the end of the stretch. We might be playing for the 1 seed. We are. And I'm looking at how can we figure out beating CJ Stroud, who had an incredible rookie campaign last year. And you're right. He had receivers that were playing superhero for him. And then all of a sudden they bring in Stephon Diggs. And you're like, wow, this is going to be the best wide receiver corps in the country. And it really hasn't lived up to those expectations. They've been good, but they haven't been those expectations. So, Jude, I completely agree with everything you said. I'm not scared of them at all, but I do respect them, and I do understand that the Chiefs have to prepare for them just like they would for any other. Now, Preston, Jude mentioned it right there. Patrick Mahomes, will he or will he not play? Here's the question that we have to, or I guess there's a preface to the question we have to ask, whether or not he'll play. But the thing that we have to realize is Patrick Mahomes, if he can play, is going to play. That is so dominantly clear to us because nobody's questioning anything about his grit, about his determination to play for this team. It's not the same situation as the guy in San Francisco. Patrick Mahomes wants to play in this game. And even though he isn't having a stellar season, he's having a good season, especially when you compare it to CJ Stroud's stats. But he's having a good season, and he wants to play. If doctors clear him, he wants to play. The question right now, Preston, put your Andy Reid headset on. Look at the record. You're 13-1. You've got a game lead, basically, because you lose the tiebreaker to Buffalo. You got a game lead over Buffalo for that 1 seed. And you've got a 3-game stretch that is very strange, including you've got the Saturday game, and then you've got a Christmas game. So taking all of that into consideration, realizing that you want Patrick Mahomes, obviously, to play for you in the postseason. And then the last thing is you've got a veteran in Carson Wentz on your bench you can bring in that you have said yourself you're confident in. Preston, all of these clues, all of this evidence, all of these things put together, is Patrick Mahomes, if doctors clear him, if it's your decision, is he playing on Saturday?
Man, if it were my decision, I would not play him. We've got Carson Wentz. I would just roll Wentz out there for 1 game. Like, yes, I know Mahomes wants to play. He's not up for any records. He's not up for MVP. He's led the team to 13-1. But man, Houston's D-line scares me. I mean, Danielle Hunter with 12 sacks and Will Anderson Jr. with 10.5. And those are both edge rushers, and our clear weaknesses are at tackles. So, personally, I would put Carson Wentz out there for this game and then tell Mahomes, go win your 2 must-win games versus Pittsburgh and Denver if Wentz were to lose versus Houston. I think if we started Wentz, we would win. So, that's what me, personally, I would do.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think if Carson Wentz is in the game as our quarterback, as our starting quarterback, I don't think that we necessarily lose the game. It's not necessarily, it's not how it works. But I love what you said. Patrick Mahomes, and that's why I mentioned the stats, he's not up for any awards. He's not going to be the MVP. That's clear. He's not going to probably be Offensive Player of the Year unless he goes on a 3-game crazy stretch. He's not going to win those awards. And ultimately, what's the goal that Patrick Mahomes right now? He's already done all that stuff. What's the goal he has right now? Keep winning rings. And to win rings, you have to be on the field. And I mean, well, not technically, but for the Chiefs to win another ring this year, he has to be on the field, right? And so I think I completely agree with you, Preston. I think he's got to be out there. Jude, do you disagree with Preston and I's statements? Do you think Patrick Mahomes should sit out this game with the realization that he would be playing next Wednesday on Christmas Day?
No, I completely agree with you. I think Pittsburgh is the more important thing to focus on, right? They're a more scary team, in my opinion. So I think having Mahomes just feeling good, like, there's no way you can feel completely good just less than a week after an injury like that. And so there's just no point in rushing him back if he's not going to be at full strength, because why would you want a hampered quarterback playing for you as you move towards the playoffs? Just doesn't make sense, and there's no point in trying to risk re-injury when, like you said, Carson Wentz is right there on board. Just put him in, right?
Yeah, and I feel like if it was a different backup, like let's say, the Chiefs had Zach Wilson or something, maybe even I would actually be okay with Zach Wilson in this situation, but like just somebody of way lower caliber, then yeah, I would be a little bit more hesitant. But again, 1 game in the middle of December is not going to be the same as 1 game in February. You would much rather be playing in February with Patrick Mahomes than be playing right now with Patrick Mahomes. So that's why I'm thinking, hey, you've got the spot, you got it clinched. If you end up losing the 1 seed by making this move, it's okay. The Chiefs, everybody was asking whether or not they can play on the road. Can Patrick Mahomes go win the playoff game on the road? He beat Buffalo last year in Buffalo. He beat Baltimore last year in Baltimore. He can do it. And I think being healthy helps that a lot. He wasn't even healthy in a couple of games throughout this stretch of Super Bowl runs. So I think he can do it injured. I would much rather prefer that he is able to use his legs, because if he is able to move around much better, that is so much more effective, especially in the playoffs. We've seen some huge moments where he was able to use his legs to go get clutch first down. So, Chiefs 13-1 will be playing the Texans, who are at 9-5 right now at noon on Saturday. Like Jude said, there's no shame if you didn't know it was Saturday. It is kind of a surprise, but college football season wrapping up in the regular season and the bowl schedule beginning. The NFL loves to take advantage of these Saturday primetime moments, because people love watching football on Saturday and Sunday and Thursday and Wednesday next week and Friday, and it's all of the days. So there's so many days of football in the next over winter break if you get a break from school or work, and it's going to be an exciting time for the Chiefs, who are dealing with some injuries, but Preston, some good news coming out just recently. The expectation is that Marquise Hollywood Brown will be returning from the IR for this game against the Texans. What does that impact look like for both the Chiefs' offense as well as the wide receiver room?
I don't think it impacts the offense greatly. I do think it will lead to Xavier Worthy doing what he's meant to do and flying down the field a little bit more, because I could see Hollywood working over the middle of the field more than Xavier Worthy. But lately we've had Worthy just going over the middle of the field, finding that open spot. But I can see Hollywood dipping into that role come playoff time, which will be helpful. Hopefully it can open up the top. Hopefully it creates a more dynamic offense for Mahomes. But I also, like, Justin Watson's been doing that right now, so I don't think it will change a ton, but I do think Hollywood's clearly the more dynamic player. And so hopefully that leads to a lesser snap count for Justin Watson, but it also helps us with the D-Hop staying under 60% snap count, so we don't have to pay that draft pick to Tennessee.
Yeah, there's a couple things that you've got to have to look at, but I feel like this wide receiver room I'm more comfortable with than last year, even with all the injuries and everything. I'm excited to see what they can do when playoff time comes around. All right, I want to grab some quick takes from you really quick as we take a quick break from the real analysis, and let's look at some Madden. The Texans and the Chiefs get Madden broadcast with Chad Ochocinco on the call. Jude, what are your thoughts on this as NBC Sports tries their best to create another alternate broadcast?
I mean, I don't like those things. They're not fun to watch. What was it? I don't remember. It was Simpsons, I think.
And
yeah,
you're right.
That was just terrible. It was really bad. I don't know why they try and do these. I don't know if people actually watch them. That's the thing. Like, if people are actually watching that, I understand. But it looks terrible. I don't know how people would enjoy that.
Well, so my guess is they're just trying to expand the audience, right? Which, it's interesting that they're doing Madden, because most people who play Madden care about the NFL at least a little bit. But I mean, yeah, I agree. I didn't like the Simpsons broadcast because a Simpsons character sent me home in one of my fantasy leagues to a Waffle House challenge, because I had I was playing against CeeDee Lamb, and I saw him catch a touchdown pass on the first drive of the game. That was so annoying. I do check them out because they're interesting, but Jude makes a good point. I don't love it because I like football, but when you look at the Manning cast, which I think is a little bit more curated towards football fans, but there's also been the Simpsons one, like Jude mentioned. There was a Toy Story one last year, and then CBS does their like Nickelodeon like Slime Time game as well, at least one per year. So there's a lot of options. You know, Amazon Prime has their stat version. Preston, what is your thoughts on this like new world, this new generation of these alternate broadcasts? Do you have any interest in them, number one? And number two, what do you think it should be the goal of these alternate broadcasts in terms of looking at your audience?
I mean, me personally, if it's a game I'm actually wanting to watch, no, it doesn't interest me at all. Now, I will say, like with the Manning cast on Monday Night Football, yeah, I'll watch that. I'm a bit more of the analytical side of sports, so that's fine. But no, these cartoon ones, my sisters will watch them. Like, I'm sure that it reaches out to the younger generation a little bit more, but I personally just have no interest in watching this, wasting my time when I would rather just honestly not watch football at all if that's what it came down to.
Well, but I think you just made a great point there, and I think you kind of you understand what they're trying to do, and you realize that it is reaching a bigger audience because yeah, there's some kids out there that wanted to watch the Toy Story, or even some adults who don't really care about football, or like, I'll watch a Simpsons broadcast. Like, there's a bigger audience there, so as long as they don't go overboard with it, I think I'm okay with it. But looking specifically, Preston, I'll go back to you on this one. You and I, we all play Madden, but like looking at a Madden broadcast, is this interesting to you at all? And why is it feels like this one's different than the other alternate broadcasts? Those are other things coming in. This is an already NFL based thing in Madden, and they're just kind of doing the same thing. I feel like what I'm trying to say is they're not bringing in a brand new audience to the NFL. I feel like this is a recycled audience, if anything. Do you have similar, I guess, thoughts about this?
Yeah, I mean, I agree completely. I think it's pretty ridiculous that they're doing a Madden one. I mean, I'll watch it because Ocho Cinco is going to be on the broadcast, so I'll tune in for a brief, like, 3-minute period just to see how it sounds and looks. But I mean, for like cool plays like the Saquon Barkley backwards hurdle, that would be cool to see on Madden. Like it'd be cool to see certain things, but I don't think I could watch a whole game on Madden.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think it's designed to be fast paced, and if you're going at the tempo of an actual real NFL game, it just doesn't work. So we'll see what happens. I'm excited to see what happens, and I'm excited that the Chiefs are part of it. Looking forward, though, I think it could easily go overboard, so they need to be careful. All right, another quick thing to look at. The NFL announced its Pro Bowl skill competitions for the February matchup, the weekend between the championship weekend as well and then the NFL Super Bowl, the ultimate championship in reality. It will take place on February 2nd. Looking at what we've seen in the past, there's been a lot of positive. I actually really enjoy NFL Pro Bowl weekend. It's pretty entertaining for me. There's a lot that goes on. But this year they announced a new punt competition that will feature one punter and one non-punter, I'm guessing from both team. They also are going to have a game show called Helmet Harmony, where they're going to test each other's knowledge. Jude, looking at this weekend, it's kind of far away. Again, looking at it from a marketing perspective, is the NFL Pro Bowl weekend something that you watch? Is that entertaining to you? And what are your thoughts on these new additions?
Okay, I don't sit and watch a broadcast of the Pro Bowl, but I do like YouTube highlights and stuff, individual things. I'll check that out after a few days whenever I get some time, just because it's somewhat interesting. It's somewhat cool to see stuff. But the Helmet Harmony or whatever it was called, that actually piques my interest because how much do NFL players know about the NFL, in the history? That's interesting. Are they just focused on their game and stuff, or do they have a lot of knowledge about the past? I don't know. That just seems interesting. I would probably watch that. If I'm being honest, it's a little bit different than, I guess, a regular skills competition, but it just sounds interesting, right?
So there you go. So whatever they did worked because it's piquing Jude's interest. It's piquing mine as well. I want to hear more, and I want to watch it. I'm guessing anybody who's listening right now probably is going to watch it. Preston, are you in the same boat, or are you just let's get to the next week? I'd love to watch the Chiefs win another Super Bowl.
I mean, most of the time around that time, I never have the time to sit down and actually watch the entire Pro Bowl. I know that, I do love the skills competition. I'll say that. Going back and watching YouTube highlights later, that's what I do as well, as Jude said. I am excited about this punting one because I know they've had the kick-tack-toe in the past, but now punters get to show what they can do, and that's really cool because, it's not like punters actually get used in the Pro Bowl. So it's cool that they get to step into the spotlight for a little bit.
Yeah, spotlighting people that don't always get spotlighted. So if somehow the Chiefs lose, I feel like Matt Arias is gonna end up there because he's having an incredible year. So looking at that weekend, I think it's gonna be a fun one, and I'm sure that we three at least 1 point throughout that weekend will be tuning in. They spread it out well, and so hopefully, like Jude said, even if you missed the live one, you can go back and watch on YouTube. They do a great job of clipping it. something I want to talk about on another show because we just don't have time. The NBA fully redid their NBA All-Star Weekend, which is already, I think that's probably the best All-Star Weekend in sports in my personal opinion. But looking at it, All-Star Weekend in any sport is usually really, really entertaining and fun because it's a break and it's different from what we usually see. But that format, which you have, if you haven't seen, is going to be a 3-team format, as well as the Rising Stars team, or the winner of the Rising Stars game. They're coached by the TNT halftime people that are making so much news this year, as well as Cadence Parker. So I think that's going to be really entertaining. Love to talk about that later. But as we wrap up this show, I want to go back to the Chiefs. And the big question that we have to ask ourselves today, there's lots of big questions I've said, but the question to wrap all of this up, everything that we've talked about in terms of the Chiefs, is are they lucky? So, Jude, I'll start with you. Looking at everything that's happened this year, all of the one-score games, all of the doinks, the blocks, the calls, the toes barely out of bounds, all of these things, are the Chiefs lucky, or are they just good at winning really close games?
I mean, we kind of have to, I will concede. They've had some lucky moments. The field goals, missed field goals and stuff, that's just lucky, right? It comes down to it. That's very rare things happening. And, part of that might be maybe the Chiefs are just intimidating, right? But it's a little bit lucky. But at the same time, there's just something about the Chiefs. And what I think it is that they just, and this isn't really a new idea, I guess, but they're just, people want to play for the Chiefs because the Chiefs are winners, right? And so they'll gut it out the whole game in order to stay on the team because they want to be on the winning team, right? And so some teams, if they're having a bad season and maybe they're close to the Chiefs, they still might not be totally blood, sweat, and tears to the end. They might lose a little bit of motivation if they're have a losing record, right? Because they're not winning anything at that point. But the Chiefs, everybody on the Chiefs wants to be on the Chiefs because that's the winning team, and they don't want their spot taken away, and I think that's what's really important.
Yeah, Jude, that's a great point, and I feel like the Chiefs, I agree with what you said in a lot of different things. The question that you have to ask now is, when you look at the Chiefs, if they're really putting full effort in on every single player, why aren't they beating bad teams by more? Like the Panthers game and even the Browns one, even only winning by 14 with 6 turnovers, it just doesn't really add up in my mind. But Preston, let's hear your thoughts. Do you think the Chiefs are lucky?
Well, I think it would be dumb of me to say that we are not lucky. But I don't know. I'm going to go ahead and say we are lucky, yes. Because there's no way we should have won the games that we won. There's a realistic chance we should have lost to Carolina, Las Vegas, and the Chargers. And I don't know how we won those games. And then we also got saved in the Broncos game. So, yeah, we're lucky. I do think we are a good team, but I think the luck will run out eventually.
Well, he just foreshadowed my question, maybe his answer to my question. But my final question, as Jude prepares the quote of the day, Preston, is this sustainable in terms of as we look forward to the playoffs? And if not, what needs to change before this becomes sustainable and actual foundation for us to go on another run this year?
I think it's sustainable through the AFC Championship game, or up till that point, I guess. Sorry. I think once we reach the championship game, we're going to be in for a whirlwind. We're going to have to figure out how to play competitive football. We're going to have to score a lot. Our defense is going to have to work. Because, in all honesty, I think it's Bills versus us in the championship game, unless the Ravens somehow pull out a magic win or the Steelers somehow make it, which I don't see that happening. A lot can happen any given Sunday, but I think it will run out eventually. And if our luck does run out, we just need our playmakers to step up.
Which we do have. But ultimately, here's the conclusion. Are the Chiefs lucky? Maybe. As you've heard today, we kind of have differing opinions on it. But here's what I do know. The Kansas City Chiefs are 13-1, and that's not a mistake. It might be a little bit of luck, but it's not a mistake. And as we look at this team is built to win, and it is. Now, a couple, few, pretty much almost every game, some close calls, but the Chiefs are winning. And it's much better than barely losing every single game. And I think the Kansas City Chiefs are in a position this year to do the unthinkable and go win a third one. But I don't want to jinx this. I feel like maybe I agree with Preston. Luck is running out if you believe in that kind of thing. I believe the Chiefs will be able to figure it out. It's just going to require some very specific fine-tuning because you can't fix things. It's really hard to fix things with 5 minutes left in a fourth quarter when you can fix it all week. This is the time to work on the things that they need to go win that third one. Jude, please send us out on this episode 49. That's exciting stuff. We're excited for 50 next time around. But Jude, send us out with the quote of the day.
The quote of the day by a great speaker, one of my all-time favorites, Abraham Lincoln. He said, "You cannot escape the responsibility of tomorrow by evading it today."